we are going to be doing completing the square. Okay. And we're just going to go right into an example. We have x squared plus 6x plus 1 equals 0. And I'm going to be writing steps over here so you guys can follow them later on. So my first step I'm going to do is to get all x's by themselves. So get rid of anything that's not an x. Well, we have an x squared, we have a 6x, and we have that plus 1. Well, that plus 1 doesn't have an x, so I'm going to get rid of it. So I'm left with x squared plus 6x equals -1. Step 2. Is going to be to make an area model. So I made my area model, and inside that area model, you're going to split up the middle term, which now it's not the middle term, it's just this term. So you're going to split up the middle term, but again, it's not exactly the middle term anymore because we did get rid of that -1. But if we split up a 6, we're going to split it up into 2, which will be plus 3x and plus 3x. Because 3x plus 3x gives us that 6x. So we split that up. And we're also going to put our x squared in the box like normal. Step 3 is going to be to figure out the factors on the outside. Just like we do when we're factoring, it's going to be the same thing. We say x squared and 3x. What do they have in common? An x. X squared and 3x, again, have an x. And then these must be plus 3's. Because x times 3 is 3x. X times 3 is 3x, which means those have to be plus 3's. Our fourth step is where this comes, the name of it comes from. We're going to complete the square. So we're looking for this top term. Well, if we have a plus 3 and a plus 3, we multiply those to get a plus 9. So that plus 9, we complete the square and add that number to the other side. The reason you have to add it to the other side is because technically we just added it right here, so that's on this side of the equal sign. Whatever you do to this side, you have to do to that side, so I'm going to go and add it to that side as well. I always like to circle it because then it reminds me that I need to be adding it. Sometimes if I just write plus 9, it'll get all kinds of lost right there. So I just like to circle it so I can see. Okay. Step 5 is going to be to rewrite. Now I have x plus 3 written like that, but I can also write that as x plus 3 squared. That's the same thing. And that's going to equal -1 plus 9, which will be 8. Because I added those. And then our last step is going to be to solve. And I'm going to write solve by square rooting. That's going to remind myself that when I'm solving this, I can square root it instead of having to multiply that out. So I'm going to square root, and that cancels that squared out, and I get x plus 3 equals 8. Root 8, sorry, plus or minus root 8. I subtract 3, and I get x equals -3 plus or minus the square root of 8. Now, if that square root was 9, then you would actually calculate that square root. If it's 9, 16, 25, anything that has an actual square root, you would actually calculate that out and figure out that you have 2 answers. Okay? Yeah.
So would we have to simplify the root 8?
Not necessarily, no.
So no,
You can if you want. You can absolutely simplify this, but it's not necessary. Yeah. Okay, I want you to do a couple of examples without me before I go over them. So, Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and go over these. My first step is to get the x's by themselves, so I'm going to add 9. That'll give me x squared minus 4x equals 9. I make my area model. We're going to have x squared, then we split up this negative 4 into negative 2x and negative 2x. So the difference between this one and the last one is now we have negatives. That just makes this a negative 2 and a negative 2. But when we multiply those together, we get a plus 4 that we're going to add to this side. So when I rewrite this, I'm going to get x minus 2 squared equals 9 plus 4 is 13. We solve by square rooting. So that'll be x minus 2 equals the square root of 13. When we add 2, our answer will be x equals 2 plus or minus the square root of 13. And you just leave it like that. On the second example, we don't have anything to get rid of because the x's are already by themselves. So we go on to making the area model. We have x squared. We split up that negative 8 into negative 4x and negative 4x. So our factors are going to be x minus 4, x minus 4. When we multiply negative 4 and negative 4, we get a positive 16 that we add to this side. We rewrite as x minus 4 squared equals 1. Negative 15 plus 16 is 1. Solve by square rooting. That'll be x minus 4. And since this square root actually has a square root, we're going to calculate that out. The square root of 1 is plus or minus 1. We add 4. So x equals 4 plus or minus 1. And we actually figure out what that is. 4 plus 1 is 5. 4 minus 1 is 3.